It's about time again. It's about time to jump into the giant bug eyes of Spider-Man's second best knockoff, Miles Morales. Spider-Man's always played a cool game of whack-a-mole with various characters taking on the mantle, but it's hard to argue that Miles isn't one of the most popular. A mix of childhood glee from getting his powers in Spider-Man to finding out just how much stronger he is than others in the game world. It lets Miles Morales hit a bit different than the original. Then again, Spider-Men and Spider-Women are not created equal. Spider-X, I'm talking to you. Also, sure, I don't think we're going to get this, but I would kill for a Spider-Man from Earth 11580, which was literally a bunch of spiders in a suit after eating Peter Parker. Delicious. Sorry, back to Miles. Miles is still a young and mainly clumsy Spider-Man, for sure. While not saving cats, his heroic deeds can be summed up as, oh shit, here we go again, and whoops. But that's okay. Where Peter Parker's more confidently solid in his powers with all the relationship skills of an abused pet, Miles has the physical powers and prowess that's arguably beyond Peter's and seems less filled with spider angst. The game consistently reminds you of the differences in stark contrast to family, powers, and even the connection to enemies between the two games. The game comes out soon on the PC as a port, and Sony gave me a code to give you guys a review of this title. You know that I always like to check out ports just in case, so consider this a port report. One nice thing, Miles Morales does not waste any time. You can watch this short What Happened Prior video, then boom, you're in there, taking on Miles through his level 1, no skills yet, newbie moments, and then working up, unlocking new abilities, new suits, and new gadgets all along the entire way. Peter Parker has exited stage left, leaving Miles to protect the city against a new enemy. The dreaded Tinkerer, which sounds like some elf that makes shitty Christmas toys for kids and got fired for drinking eggnog under a tree somewhere. But they aren't the only leader of a bad guy group that's trying to either help or hinder the goings-on of another militia group within the game known as Roxxon. The story's a mix between whodunit, a beat-em-up, and young teen angst. So pretty much exactly as Spider-Man prior. This is both good and bad. Good because you get the chance to really dive into a different idea of Spider-Man, with Miles' venom-empowered punches and ground slams, but still using some of the same and somewhat overlapping skills of the original Spider-Man game. One problem, though, is that even after the game's initial battle with Rhino, Miles is left with pretty much zero powers and abilities, something we see in a lot of sequels, and you end up crawling around, getting useful stuff, and it feels like the territory once traveled is now twice tired. It doesn't take long because Miles is a shorter game than Spider-Man was, but aside from that and a couple combos that you have right at the starting, a lot of it is unlocking those first very ununique skills and abilities, at least for a while. Luckily, the fighting system itself is robust enough that it's enjoyable. I actually think the fighting in Spider-Man Miles Morales feels better than the original. And a great deal of that is helped by that stretchy, putty body that Spider-Man has. Every kick and flip and punch is overreached and overreacted to. And it always feels awesome when you do a perfect dodge in there, or you leap onto some precipice and you can actually see him sort of trip, like he's just a little bit clumsy and not yet aware of what he can do. But then you get the abilities to build up your venom power that can be used in ground slams, power punches, and even to get through a number of the puzzles. That is one place Miles does feel a bit different than the original, and somewhat long in the tooth. It's that all the puzzles feel like they fit perfectly into Miles' style of gameplay. Like the entire world went, oh crap, Peter left? Make sure every generator that's running is doing it the same way so Miles can hack it, giving his five-finger venom death strike into the power supply. That being said, the combat and the swinging and the traversal are just so nailed that it really becomes a moot point overall, because nothing feels that slow in the game, even when you are at those first spots. Spider-Man Miles knows exactly what it wants to do and offer, and it does it. It's just that sometimes it can feel like it's so intricately balanced for this particular character that the world can feel a little bit weird, depending on how long it was since you played the original game. Or maybe that's just because Miles himself is actually really weird too. The best part about him is the oddities that are not Peter's. Even if Jonah Jameson just proxies his hatred onto Miles almost instantly, it works so well that this dude consistently blasting out his hatred towards Spider-Man gives Miles that same kind of feeling as a kid fighting against the world and blamed for everything. Jonah Jameson doesn't care. His aim is profoundly scattershot, and he doesn't care if it's Spider-Man 1 or 2. He's just shooting out his ire, pumping shotgun blasts of speech and hatred through his radio station, and it's awesome, and in some ways lets the player celebrate a bit more with Miles than you can do with Peter Parker because it feels like you're just a little bit separated. Graphically, though, nothing separated. It is all one big engine of awesome. Technologically, this is more sound of a game than the original. There's more in the appearances. Where the original game had its impact factor ramped up to 10, Miles still goes to 11, not the least of which is his new found and continually learned abilities, as well as a leveled up weather system. The lighting, the snow, and in some cases even the enemy design with our Hulk will smash gauntleted purple-laced bad guys that come after you, they're weirdly menacing, and then they match off against the red and gray of the Roxxon military company. There's a very cool fine line between the two bad guys, or at least the two aggressors in the game, and the way they come together and where Spider-Man sits between them is very well done, and it's done graphically many times in the game to give you nice contrasts during a battle. He's twisting and turning and looks like he's going to be arthritic by like 30, but that's what makes it work so well. The animation in Spider-Man, he moves like almost no other superhero, and it's that hero that's part gymnast, part martial artist, and part kid that learned to fly or at very least swing really friggin' fast that contains the excitement in Miles, and you get to feel it. Now, performance-wise, the game is about where you would expect it. DLSS, Insomniac's own upscaling, as well as FSR 2.1 are all here. And if you want to play with this, there's all kinds of bells and whistles. Minus ray tracing, you're going to get a good deal of FPS as well. Now, with ray tracing, you're going to want to make some concessions because the constant snow effect, the lighting, and many times trying to make drab lighting is a little bit more difficult than when you want everything to just pop. You can see some FPS drops. With ray tracing, the game does look phenomenal. Normal encounters throughout the entire game world make this thing just look like you are dramatically and realistically playing a comic book. It's just that unfortunately when the frame drops sometimes it feels a bit like a comic book missing one or two pages. Luckily it does have a ton of options to remove some of those, and some of these options make such a small impact on the overall image quality that dropping a couple to get to an FPS you want is not a sacrifice at all. Some of the shadow settings, some of the populous settings on the streets, you can drop those and get yourself 3, 4, 6, 10 FPS back and really not be able to tell at all. Also, while the ray tracing is awesome, if you have a card that can't handle it, Spider-Man still looks very good because Insomniac has done the one thing that a lot of companies do not do, and that's they've hedged the base plate game on requiring it to look awesome. It has an incredible level of detail, from the city to the weather to the parks to the characters. If there's one thing that I did notice, it's that when you crank all of the effects up and you're closer to the screen, maybe playing on your PC monitor, you may notice some oddities with the characters' facial models. Oddities that are both good and bad. One of the first things I noticed that was amazing is just how many facial twitches and movements you can see. Noses, when somebody scrunches up their nose in disgust or in fear, you can actually see that far clearer here than you could in the original game. Now, I did have up-to-date drivers on the 1080 Ti, the 3080, and the new 4090, so I could check out DLSS frame generation. On all of these, first load, it can take a little bit of time to get to the subway itself, and this is on a machine that was installed with PCIe NVMe. I'm not 100% sure what was going on there, so if you're sitting there and you see a black screen, be aware that black screen will probably go away, but that initial load is pretty raw. The big drops in performance were random, not very often, and a lot of times you're so high above a smooth frame rate anyway that when it did dump, it didn't dump enough to make it still not look smooth. You have a lot of options here, and that's going to help. Now, despite some hiccups, this thing is phenomenal looking. I got to point that out. Small elements to it, like it's cluttered with debris, like no one can find a trash can, massive crowd systems, and a ton of cars, rando activities, and the ability to re-explore locations. It's just pretty incredible with or without ray tracing. Watching the snow melt away from the suit, or seeing the ice and slush piled up on roadways, and then walking past a building and seeing people inside. It is impressive, even if you have those settings for crowds and traffic vehicles all the way down. It's a testament to just how much Insomniac knows how to deliver a game city and how well Nixie's has actually translated some of this to the PC port. So we know the gameplay is solid Spider-Man. We know the graphics look good with a couple issues here and there, but how's this thing sound?
I thought I'll be able to fix anything. Do anything that Spider-Man does.
Whenever you say Spider-Man, you always mean the other one. You're Spider-Man. You can fix this. Your way.
gonna blow the whole lot.
Hey, where's the new form I asked for?
We're trying to make more, but Mason didn't leave behind any notes.
And?
Well, I had heard that one canister of new form survived the incident on the bridge. Now, if we had access to that,
Don't you think that if I had it, I would give it to you?
I did this. My powers. I made it explode.
Let's discuss voice again, and it continues with the same issues the original game had on the PS4 and 5. Miles always takes me a little bit to get accustomed to. The same happened in the first time I tried it. Like, for a moment, his voice sounds almost too young for the mocap, then too old, then it sort of settles in and it's just right. Then it starts to work in when you have your families, your get-togethers, and everyone's sitting around talking, and it really starts to hit its stride of family. That is awesome, and it brings you right directly into the story. Miles, his friends, computer superheroes, people out there who are contacts, they all sound really good. I dig their voices, pretty much every one of them. If there's one place, just like on the PlayStation, that hits wrong is the main bad guy. Troy Baker shows up to play the leader of the military contractor, but seriously, it just feels so phoned in. Sometimes this happens and sometimes no one cares to adjust a character, but it sounds here more like Troy was doing a podcast and they recorded it. He's just de facto military leader. Even the times when he turns menacing, it sounds like somebody whispered to him, "Hey man, hiss more," like a snake. Troy's very talented as a voice actor, but his skills are just simply not put to any kind of test here, meaning the main bad guy hits with all the threat of someone demanding you eat a fruit pie. You're just gonna do it and not give a shit. The jury's out if every bad guy needs to sound like a bad guy in real life. They don't. Mike Tyson sounded like an 11-year-old boy when he won the title by Mortal Kombating the soul out of a champion. At that time, though, we weren't expecting these kind of things. But now, and especially when you look at these characters, I think that a good offset for the bad guys would have helped, especially once you sort of identify who the different bad guys are. It would have elevated that character a bit. What does elevate this above, though, is the music. Completely different from the original game. Switching from that more orchestral fare of the original with something that's really closely resembles the idea of Miles' own likes and dislikes. It helps the game feel completely different than Spider-Man acoustically as well. It may take a bit of getting accustomed to, but that montage scene that happens in the game where they're working on the spider suit feels more like its own thing than the vague ripoff of the consistent movie montage scenes we see of the same effects. How about the audio? Spider-Man, it's just cracking. One of the places you notice is when Miles and his pals go to a political rally. And there's this deep thrum of music washing out of the bottom end as people talking and selling items and laughing and arguing squeeze the middle and top end so that bass can't travel through it. And it makes that moment feel real, far more accurate. And it's like an acoustic slam fest at a street when everybody gets together to listen to something. And when that sound goes away, its absence is, in effect, a sound itself. Audibly, the game does an excellent job with its 3D effects, and you gotta check this out. Most of the time accurately reflecting enemies behind objects, above you or below you. Or the best when Miles has to muffle somebody up when he slaps 5 bags of gooey spider gunk into their eyes and then double mule kicks them into the stratosphere like he's trying to compete with Tesla. Those are moments that I absolutely love. Even the slowdown moment when you've completed a crime and everything slows down and the animation hits right before you hit the button to continue on. There's something about it that they've really dialed into that feeling of satisfaction in their audio, which is a huge deal. The combat is also very exceptional sounding. Rockets flying past your head and the deep throttled out big caliber weapons from the mounted vehicles sound about as menacing as you would think they should be. It's excellent audio throughout it. There's not as many options as I would have liked for adjusting in the audio options though, and that's something to keep aware of. But overall, I really like this. If there's anything I could say that I didn't, I would love for the guns to sound more gun-like. These are very comic booky, anime, cartoon sounding guns. But that brings us to the fun factor. Did all this come together? And I think you can already tell. With Spider-Man in particular, there's this fractional way that he sees success. Always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And that's the kind of character. With Miles, we see a different situation. Cornerstones of a more personal story due to the enemy's identity, as well as his own newfound responsibility without the red and blue colored parachute that's been saving him all this time, known as Spider-Man OG. The gameplay is improved from the original, and the way crimes are doled out feels better throughout. One thing to remember is Miles is solidly in shorter territory. To get to 100%, you're only looking at 18 to 20 hours. Of course, that's going to depend on the difficulty settings you choose. I played for about 11 to wrap it up, and there was still a lot I could continue doing. I do play organically, meaning I'll go around and I'll just sort of do what I want, taking on some side missions, taking on the main missions, going and looking for various items that are in the game world and so forth. But it's not a sprawling Spider-Man title like the original title was. It goes out there, it offers you excellent combat, slightly improved from the original, and a very, very pretty city to explore with so much interaction between everybody. And it is very fun experimenting with the combat, and I think more so even than the original here. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating system. This game comes in at what I would be considered Sony's slightly higher than normal price. It's not the longest game in the world for sure. I think it could have been maybe 2 or 3 more hours of actual solid gameplay footing to really make this nailed as a single player full title. That being said, for $49.99, it is worth getting, especially if you're on the PC and want to jump into this brand new, or if you just want to crank up them graphics and play it again. If there's any real complaint, it's the same one I had for Spider-Man. Sometimes I find a suit in this game and I stick with it. Experimentation is fun, but not really required here. When you get the suits and you get the gadgets, you really start to end up identifying with 1 or 2 particular ones because they have some really cool skills overall, or they look good and they just sort of fit the way you want to be displayed as Spider-Man. Now, this may change for some people, but for me in particular, there were 3 or 4 that once I stuck with and started getting gadgets for, as long as I had the various different skill paths I wanted unlocked, I really didn't feel a huge need to switch out. I think that that is just a sign of the way the game sort of wants to make sure that you can go into most situations and get out alive, as long as you're just not absolutely stupid in how you prepare or how you fight. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys liked it. Stay tuned for more reviews. We got reviews for Marvel Midnight Suns, Evil West. We got reviews for Gungrave. Got the podcast coming up on Friday. Got the best December games to look forward to. Got the indie events and so much more. Also, we've now opened up the patrons for YouTube. So if you want to become a YouTube member for whatever reason, when you go to a certain level of the membership, you can actually join the patron Discord as well and get almost all of that stuff. Plus, I have some special things there, and we're going to start now uploading members-only videos connected to the patrons-only videos. So if I do something for them, we're going to start uploading those as well to YouTube. So that just opens it up. We do have a lot of YouTube members here, and they've just been awesome people, and I haven't really put the system together until now, but it is. That's it for me. Peace out. Stay tuned for the videos.
Corporate kidnapping squad down.